All right, guys, let's talk about stress. Stress is multifaceted and multidimensional, and it's something that pretty much all of us in this current day and age are struggling with. But a lot of people don't understand stress, and I get a lot of clients through the door and I ask them, are they stressed? Is there a lot going on? How are their energy levels? How do they feel? And so many of them respond with, no, I'm not stressed. I don't get stressed. I've got this and this and this and this and this and this and this going on, and this is happening in my physical body, and I'm having this symptom, and this is how I'm presenting, and this is what's happening, but I'm not stressed. And often I need to go through a process of educating those people about what stress actually is, and it's really vital and really an important part of understanding and maintaining and taking care of our health. Understanding stress. What is stress? How does it affect us? How can it affect us? In what ways does stress present, and what kind of symptoms can be the result of stress? And basically, stress impacts us on every level. It impacts us physically, so physically in every system in the physical body, in every organ in the physical body can be impacted by stress. It will be impacted by stress if stress is not managed appropriately. Stress affects us emotionally in a huge way. Stress affects us mentally massively again, and that then trickles down and affects us on our physical level by impacting sleep and how we operate in our day-to-day life, and how capable, how competent we are, how depressed we feel, how motivated we feel. All of those things impacted by stress, and stress impacts us spiritually as well. And like most things in life, stress in moderation can be a good thing, because it's under a certain amount of stress, so usually very low level stress, that our body grows and develops. And I'll give you a few examples of that. It's like the child that doesn't yet have an immune system. It's under the stress of being exposed to pathogens and the external environment and playing in the dirt and having the dog lick their face that their body, through stress, by that stressful impact of the environment, their body learns about their environment and how it needs to kind of adjust and adapt itself so that it can survive in its environment. So that's where the immune system is developed. And it's like vaccinations, that's how they work as well. They expose us to a minute amount of a certain pathogen that then tells the body, oh my God, there's a threat, there is a potential threat. Immune system learn how to fight this potential threat so that it doesn't become a serious threat to us later on. And that's a stress response. That's the body being under some amount of pressure and learning how to become stronger and how to stand in the face of that, and how to manage its response to potentially stressful external stimuli. And in exercise as well, your muscle becomes really strong through you damaging it. So you put that muscle under stress by using it, and you literally damage it. You break the muscle, the cells of the muscle, through that usage. And what that does to the body is it teaches the body that it needs to get prepared to deal with certain things in the external environment. So what that could be telling the body is that we've got to lug huge logs, or we've got to perform labor work where we're going to be using this muscle a lot, and you need to adapt and adjust so that you are capable and you are able. And then the muscle kind of rebuilds itself, anticipating and in preparation for that overuse, and then you overuse it again and push it to the next point. And that can go too far. You can go too far, and you can cause serious harm and serious problem and serious release of proteins into the body that affects the liver and the kidneys and like everything. Good, well, most things good in a certain amount, but once it reaches a certain threshold, that stress can become very harmful and very, very detrimental. And that's where a lot of us find ourselves. We find ourselves stressed in certain areas of our lives, but we're not managing it appropriately, or perhaps we're unaware that it's even happening, and we don't know how to manage it appropriately, and we don't know how to help our bodies to adjust and adapt to the stressors that it is coming up against. Because that stress, ultimately what it does is it tells our body about potential threats, so that our body learns how to defend and how to protect itself and how to keep itself safe, because that's this thing's primary function, especially the nervous system, that's the primary function, is safety. Keep this thing safe first and foremost. And it also educates and tells our body about, again, what our environment is like and what we need to be prepared for, and how we can prepare ourselves so that we can perform the tasks that we need to perform. So it's like how the body gets its messages about how it needs to prime itself, what it needs to prioritize, where it needs to develop, where perhaps it doesn't need to develop that area so much because we don't seem to be experiencing that as a stressor in our life or as something that is demanded or commanded of us. So it really sends signals and messages to the body so that it knows how to adapt. And same with some amount of emotional stress, some amount of mental stress. You can't learn by never putting your brain under stress and never exposing it to something that's going to cause it to feel like, oh my God, I don't know what that means. I don't know how to work that out. I don't know how to think about that. It's by exposing ourselves to mental stress, mental equations, or wherever it is that you struggle, that's going to cause the brain to develop certain neural pathways and certain abilities, and it's going to cause the brain to emphasize certain lobes and certain areas of those lobes, and to throw away and ditch some neural pathways that perhaps you're not using because you don't mentally experience that as a mental stressor in your life. So great. Certain amount of stress for priming the body, getting the bodies ready to deal with life and to be prepared for life. But as I said, in excess, stress can be very, very damaging, and often, so often, like 99.9% of the time when I'm working with clients, we can often bring it back to that stress response. There's something that's happening through their diet, through their lifestyle, through their environment, through their thoughts, what they're thinking, through their feeling, so what they're experiencing emotionally, and what things that may be happening in their life or happening for them on a physical level. It's stress that is often at the root cause of what's happening for them symptomatically, so what they're actually presenting with. And so often, and it's not the be-all and end-all, because you obviously need to support and nourish and nurture those systems that are affected by stress so that they can return back to their normal function and increase their ability to be able to function under stress. But so often we bring it back to managing that stress. How do we reduce that stress? Sometimes reducing that stress is just encouraging that person to sleep properly, or to eat more, or to eat less, or to exercise more, or to reconnect with nature, to spend more time in sunshine, whatever it is, or meditate, doing breathing, to reduce the impact of that stress. And that often has this enormous relieving effect on a systemic level, because the body's like, oh, we can relax. And when the body relaxes and doesn't feel like it's under threat, it begins to be able to prioritize processes that it otherwise shelves. And I'll talk you through that a bit more when we get to it. But that stress is impacting and affecting on a systemic level. And stress can be an excess of something. So stress can be too much thinking. It can be too much working. It can be too much emotional impact. It can be too much junk food. It can be too much sitting around. It can be too much, too many supplements is something that I often talk to people about as well, because if you're taking a lot in, you've got to think about the systems and the organs that are being affected by everything that you're putting in your bodies. Or sometimes having too many supplements puts enormous strain on the kidneys, and the kidneys then become stressed and are impacted by that, and then there's an organ degradation that happens on that level, which then becomes a whole system degradation, which then affects the entire being. And so it can be an excess of anything. Anything in excess, too much caffeine, too many antihistamines, too much bending down, too much exercise. Again, it's an enormous amount of stress, literally breaking the muscles and then rebuilding them and releasing a whole heap of proteins into the system that the system then has to deal with and manage. It can be an enormous stress on the body. On its own, like just in a normal amount, a healthy amount, it's quite a big amount of stress. So in excess, same thing again. Too much starving the self, too much TV, too much exposure to EMR, EMT, and too much exposure to the phone, to screens, to blue light, all sorts of things. If it's in excess, it's going to be stressful and it's going to be harmful to the body. But stress can also be not enough of certain things. So if you're not getting enough nutrients, you're not sleeping enough, you're not exercising enough, you're not moving to get the lymph and the blood pumping in the system to remove toxins from certain organs, which then causes stress and strain on those toxins, on those organs that are accumulating the toxins, which then affects that whole system, which then affects the whole body, which then affects the mood and the brain, and you're groggy, and it just ripples out and it expands. So stress can be too much of a thing, but it can also be too little of a thing. And that's something that we all need to feel into, because that's unique for everyone. That's not going to be the same for everyone. There are some people who can really handle, just going back to exercise, really hardcore workouts where they're moving everything and they're bouncing and they're shaking and their bodies just thrive in that. And then there are others who try to do that and their bodies are like, no, it's too much. I need slow walking. I need yoga. I need meditation. I need being out in the sunshine and connecting with nature. And it's not that they're exclusive to each other, but different kinds of bodies require different kinds of things. Different kind of bodies require different kind of nutrients. Different kind of bodies are and I guess, again, it's part of what you're exposed to when you're a child and when your system is initially under that stress and what it adapts itself to. Because some bodies are really great at handling some levels of stress that other bodies just aren't. Like chemicals in the air, pesticides in the food, smoke. If you grew up in a city, your body may have just gone, okay, we've just got to deal with the fact that we're surrounded by exhaust fumes and smoke and we're just bustling and noise and lots of people, and we just have to adapt to that and be okay in that. And then there may be others who grew up in nature and were never exposed to that come into that, and suddenly the body's like, what is going on? What is this? And they have hay fever and they have reactions and they get rashes and the lungs play up and the digestion goes because they just can't handle it. And there's nothing wrong either way. And there are always things that we can do to help the body to reprogram itself and to get better at dealing with stress. So increasing stress tolerance, really by working on the nervous system and the endocrine system to help people to adjust to certain things. But always we've got to find what actually works for that body, what actually works for that person, what is an appropriate level of stress, and when does it become too much? When is something in too much excess or too much lack? And when do we need to intervene and do something about that to allow the whole system to stabilize? Because again, and this is something that I really, really feel and like to talk about a lot, but every system in the body is connected. And then this physical body is connected to our emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies as well. And it's all interwoven. It's all working together. And if one of those systems or one organ in one of those systems is out of whack and is malfunctioning, then it affects that whole system, because that whole system has to kind of adjust itself and make up for the organ that isn't performing to its best. And then that ripples out and it affects us on a systemic level. And then you had something wrong with your toe and you've ended up with brain fog and an inability to think as a result of it. And they're not directly connected to each other, but the way that the whole body has to adjust itself and has to compensate for whatever isn't working, whatever isn't performing to its best ability. And the whole system is affected by that. And that then affects us on an emotional level, on a mental level, and on a spiritual level as well. And that's working this way in as well. If you are mentally stressed, if you're not stimulated enough mentally, which is also a form of stress, because your mental body is like, there's no input here, there's no stimuli, okay, we're just going to lay back and kind of recline and let things degrade because we're not using them, then that's a form of stress as well. And that's going to impact you on all these other levels. It's going to impact you emotionally, especially because there's an enormous amount of lethargy, and what's the point that comes with things being dull and numbed out and not working properly. And then that's going to affect you on a physical level as well. It's going to affect your ability to think. It's going to affect your ability to relate. It's going to affect certain systems and organs in your body. So stress is a multifaceted thing and needs to be viewed as a multifaceted thing. And where one stress exists, it can't be viewed in isolation. It needs to be considered in place of everything else that's happening in that person and happening for that person. It's very significant, and it's often fixing that stress and allowing that person to return to a state of homeostasis just kind of gives everything permission to come back and to function normally and to function optimally. There is a state of harmony that already exists for all of us, but it's us stressing and straining and pulling ourselves out of shape through that causes us to not exist naturally in that state of harmony. So often when we cease the stress, the stressful behaviors, the overstress, because again, a little bit good for development and growth and causing the body to explore new things and explore new possibilities and not just stay in its comfort zone where it gets lazy. But if we deal with that, it often has a huge ripple out effect on a systemic level. And there's something else that's happening it's a very biological, very physiological process that happens when you experience stress. Again, can be physical, can be emotional, can be mental, can be spiritual, can be environmental, it can be anything. When you experience stress, the nervous system, which again is primed for keeping us safe, its sole purpose and sole function is to keep us safe. So the nervous system is responsible for stimulating organs and activity, and every muscle that contracts, every message that's sent to your big toe, everything that happens in the body, it's sent through as messages through the nervous system. And I'm going to do another video on the nervous system just because it is so complex and so intricate and so paramount and involved in everything that is happening for us on all of these levels. But the nervous system, when it detects stress in the body, so when it feels that the system is under stress, there's something that is a threat, it sends that message to the brain. There's something wrong. And it doesn't matter what that stress is. And often in naturopathy, when we're talking about this, we describe a situation where a person's being chased by a bear. If you're being chased by a bear, that stress response that your body receives is exactly the same stress response that's experienced if you're having an emotionally difficult day, or if you stubbed your toe, or if you're mentally strained, or if you're not sleeping enough. The message that is sent through the nervous system to the brain is the same, and that message is, we are under threat. Doesn't matter what the stimuli is, doesn't matter what the stressor is. If there's stress there, that message is going to be, we are under threat. And the body only has one mode when it's under threat, And what happens on the systemic level, on that chemical level really, so through the endocrine system, from that brain level, message sent through nervous system to brain, message received by brain, the control center, and then a hormonal cascade happens. So hormones are released and hormones are triggered, which causes the body to go into fight or flight mode. Again, doesn't matter what that stress is. So your stress that you're experiencing at work for your body is just as impactful, just as intense, just as acute, just as serious as you being chased by a bear. And let's think about what happens when you're being chased by a bear. What is your body prioritizing in that moment? If there's a big grizzly chasing you, you're not thinking about eating. You're not thinking about digesting food. Your body doesn't care about absorbing nutrients in those moments. It doesn't care about getting enough vitamin D. It doesn't care about sleep. It's not prioritizing any of these functions. It's not prioritizing going to the toilet or proper bowel movements or any of that stuff. It's not even bothered by the fact that you just stubbed your toe or that you're bleeding from your leg or that the sun is going down and it's getting scary or that something just hit you in the head or someone just shot you with a dart. The immediate threat is that you are being chased by a bear. So the body's like, we've just got to move. And so it prioritizes the things in your body that are going to allow you to get out of that dangerous situation and into a situation of safety, fight or flight. So it's getting ready to either take that bear on or flee. And most likely you're fleeing unless you've got some serious weaponry on you. And so that's what the body's doing. And in that state, again, it's not thinking about nutrients. It's not thinking about your gut. It's not thinking about your period. It's not thinking about getting the lining in your womb really nice and juicy and perfect for impregnation. It's not thinking about any of that stuff. It's not thinking about making sure that the toxins that are accumulating in your breast tissue are being taken away so that it doesn't develop into cancer. It's not thinking about fighting the cancer cells that are constantly being produced in our bodies but are actually taken care of by the immune system when the immune system has space to think about that. It's not thinking about fighting off the cold or the flu that suddenly come into your system. The body's like, that is not important. What is important is that we are under threat and we need to get out of this situation where we are under threat. It's not thinking about the pain in your knee. And so often the conditions that people walk through the door with, it's like your body would take care of that if it had the time and the space to prioritize taking care of that, if it felt that that was the most immediate and important thing for it to focus on. But when you're in a state of stress, the body's not going to think about taking care of those things. Of course, your gut isn't contracting properly. Of course, you're not excreting bile appropriately because the body just doesn't care about that when you're under stress. So often these symptoms, it's like, okay, let's deal with the stress. Let's take away that grizzly bear that your body feels it's being chased by. Let's remove that from the equation so that your body can transition out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. And that's where the healing happens. That's its other mode. There's rest and digest, or there's fight or flight. Again, any stress into fight or flight. And most of us aren't transitioning properly or fully out of that fight or flight mode and going into that state of rest and digest. And there's a lot of stress in the world now. There's noise everywhere. We've got phones, we've got TVs, we've got screens everywhere. There are people everywhere. We're disconnected from nature. We're working in air-conditioned buildings and never getting outside. We're not experiencing the wind on our face. We're not letting ourselves sleep, and we're not doing those things and engaging in those activities that tell the nervous system and send the message to the body that we're safe. We're safe. It's okay. There's no bear chasing us. We're not under stress. We're not on that stressful work call anymore. We're not standing next to that person that's yelling and screaming anymore. We're not working out at the gym anymore. We're not under stress. We're okay. We're safe. Now's the time to take care of the self. And it's in that rest and digest state that the body's going to secrete bile. It's in that rest and digest state that peristalsis is going to happen properly, that you're going to be able to form stools and release stools, and that the lymph is going to go to the organs and go, oh, okay, let's get rid of all those toxins now, and let's rejuvenate, let's regenerate, let's sleep, let's let the mind rest, let's regenerate neurologically and clear out any toxins that have accumulated there. Let's make sure that we're breathing properly and that the lungs are clean. Oh, we have time and space to go and deal with those cancer cells and to fight the cold or the flu that we've just been developing. And it's only once you move out of that stress state that the body begins to prioritize other things. And it will go through, I've just done a video on the law of cure, so the reversal of symptoms, and it's going to systematically go through and address the things that are the most immediate threat. Being chased by a bear, that's the most immediate threat. Then once we get through that, we move into a state of rest and digest, and we address the things that are most important systematically. The body will go through and address them one by one. But it means being in that rest and digest state for long enough for the body to be able to fully go through that process of addressing everything that does need to be addressed, of clearing things out, of revitalizing, regenerating, and then sleeping so that you can rebuild and you can actually regenerate from the shock that you have experienced that day. But so many of us aren't taking the time. We have these stressful days, and then we come home and we just keep thinking about it, and we're still thinking about it, and we've got the TV blaring and the kids are yelling, and we've got to make dinner, and there's so much going on, and then by the time we get to bed we can't turn our minds off. So the body still is like, we're under stress. We're still being chased by a bear, and then we attempt a few hours of sleep, tossing and turning, and never fully get into a restful space where we can actually sleep, so that regeneration and that clearing out of toxins isn't occurring, and then we wake up and we do it again. So I can't stress enough how significant a role stress is playing in our lives, and how significantly it is impacting our health, and how important it is to come back to that relaxed state, that place of rest and digest where we can actually regenerate and rejuvenate and recover. Because being in that constant state of fight or flight, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Your gut isn't going to work. Your hormones aren't going to function properly. You're going to feel physical pain. Your chronic pain isn't going to go. The thoughts, the emotions, any of the symptoms, the swelling in your legs, all of it, it's not going to pass. It's not going to correct itself, because it's never been given the chance, the opportunity, the space to be looked at and to be taken care of by the body. So that in itself, just that cortisol response, and of course cortisol is the hormone that I'm talking about that is responsible for shifting us into that fight or flight mode, is secreted by the adrenals, and then the adrenals become exhausted. And so many people that I see are just living in a state of adrenal exhaustion, where they've used all their cortisol up, and the adrenals are like, man, go into rest and digest so we can create some more cortisol so we can keep getting you through these stressful days and these stressful times. But they're not sleeping. They're not resting. So they're not regenerating. They're not rejuvenating. They're not building more of that hormone, because the body, again, is not prioritizing the production or the secretion of hormones appropriately when it's in that fight or flight mode. It's like, that stuff can wait, because that's not as important as being chased by a bear. So the adrenals become exhausted, and oftentimes if that is gone unchecked and that's chronic enough, then it can result in something like chronic fatigue, where your body just can't do anything, it can't move. It's like you're being forced into rest and digest because you've pushed it too far, and the body has got nothing else. It's run out of juices it's been running so hard for so long that it's got nothing else left to give to that fight or to that race. It's like the bear's been chasing you for so long that you just have to give up and lay down and let it take you because you've got nothing left to give. And that's what that chronic fatigue state is. It's the body going, I have nothing else. We have to stop. And it's often devastating for a person getting to that state, and the reversal of that, coming back out of that state, can be a long and arduous journey and quite painful for people. So better not to end up there. Better not to end up with adrenal fatigue. And all I can do is give you really general tips. Look at where that stress is in your life. And again, it can be physical, so through your diet, your exercise, your environmental toxins, connecting with nature, too much screen time, sleep, all of those things need to be looked at. And emotionally, so if you need extra emotional support, seeking that extra emotional support so that that doesn't become a chronic stress for you as well. And mentally, meditation, breathing, being still for long enough for the mind to be able to go into a state of calm, challenging yourself to learn new things, to discover new things, to explore new things. That can be really refreshing and regenerating for the mind. Spiritually, connecting in with yourself, connecting in with the land, connecting in with whatever it is that works for you, and nurturing yourself on that spiritual level. It's just going to be really simple things, making sure you're drinking enough water. But key is making sure that you have that wind down time. So you have time where you can just be with your body. And again, I'll talk about this more when I do my video on the nervous system, because that's how you reprogram the nervous system. It's just calm assurance. It's being with yourself, loving yourself, taking care of yourself, and letting the body know that it's safe. We're okay now. We're safe now. And there are things that you can do. It's like herbs that you can take, supplements you can take, teas that you can drink, different yogic poses that teach the body that we're safe, that we're okay. You can wind down, you can relax, and there'll be different things for different people, whatever it is that works for you. But finding what it is that works for you, that allows the body to switch out of fight or flight mode and into rest and digest mode. And then you're going to get hungry, and you're going to be able to eat and actually absorb your nutrients and actually have the gut work the nutrients and work the stool, work the toxins through, and you're going to have nice stools, and you're going to go to the toilet well, and you're going to urinate appropriately when it's actually appropriate, and you're going to have energy to exercise, and all of that stuff will fall into place. Again, you may need extra support to really support the systems and the bodies that have been really impacted by the stress, but the removal of that stress and that, we're okay now, we're safe, it's time to calm, it's time to relax, and I'm here with you, and I've got you, and all of that kind of stuff is going to help you to go into that mode where you can actually do that, and you can actually take care of your body, and you can actually switch your immune system on and use your immune system and use your brain and those kinds of things. So really, really vital and really important, and I really, really recommend that you explore what works for you. It might be worth exploring what works for other people, just to get tips and directions about how you can kind of find what works for you. If you need external support, again, maybe you just need a really good massage. Maybe you need to go for a swim in the ocean. Maybe you need to go to a spa. Maybe you need to see your acupuncturist. Maybe you need to get some cupping done. Maybe you need to go to a yoga class. Maybe you need to see a naturopath. Maybe you've got a really great doctor who can really help you with this. And find what's going to help you to feel safe enough to enter rest and digest mode and move out of fight or flight mode. And it's going to go a long way in helping you to come back to health and kind of explore and rediscover what a healthy state for you looks and feels like.